Hey guys, welcome back to White Cheeto Gaming, where you can find all of your basic tips on Total War games. We just finished our Total War Troy unit guides, and now we're moving on to Warhammer 2. If you're interested in this content and want to keep up to date with future guides, hit that subscribe button. Today we'll be looking at the unit roster of the High Elves. High Elves have a pretty balanced roster when compared to the other factions. They have a strong front line, strong missiles, good cavalry, only access to one type of artillery, and many different dragons and phoenixes. A cool faction effect of the High Elves is a passive ability called Martial Prowess. This ability increases melee attack by 2 and melee defense by 12 as long as the unit has more than 50% health. All High Elf units will have this passive ability, but the higher tier units have access to an upgraded version called Martial Mastery. This gives 8 melee attack and 12 melee defense. Please note that this guide is mainly for campaign use and not multiplayer. First of the melee infantry are the spearmen. These are spear and shield infantry with a missile block chance of 55%, decent armor, good morale, average speed, low melee attack, decently high melee defense, decent weapon damage. They have a charge defense against large units and bonus damage versus large. These will be your standard frontline units of the High Elf roster. Rangers. These are a dual sword infantry with fairly low armor, good leadership, high speed, decent melee attack, and melee defense, good weapon damage with bonus versus infantry. They have decent charge bonus. They have the ability to dodge melee attacks and missile fire. They move quickly through trees and take 20% less physical damage. These units should be used for flanking the enemy front line. They move fast through trees, meaning they can be hidden in the woods on the side of the battlefield to give them the perfect opportunity to flank the front line. The White Lions of Chrace. These are heavily armored great axe infantry. They have high leadership, average speed, good melee attack, and melee defense with 34 weapon strength, with good armor piercing values, decent charge bonus. They have Lion Cloak, which provides reduced damage from missile fire and magical attacks. These guys will be used for bolstering your front lines, or you can use them as frontline units. The Scions of Mathlin, a regiment of renowned version of these spearmen, basically the same as the spearmen, but they have higher leadership, attack, and defense. They also negate the charge bonus of any attacker. They provide a 12% damage resistance to all nearby allies. If you have access to these guys, place them in the center of your frontline formation. The Silverin Guard. These were introduced in the latest DLC release. They are pretty much the better version of the spearmen. Heavily armored, high leadership, higher attack, health, weapon strength, and defense. They take 30% reduced damage from magical attacks, negate the charge bonus of any attacker. These will be your new frontline unit once you get access to them, although they are much more costly than the basic spearmen. The Puremain Company, a regiment of renowned version of the White Lions of Chrace, higher leadership, attack, and defense than the basic version. These guys have an added bonus of plus 15% physical resistance to all allies within range. These guys will be used in the same way as your basic versions, bolstering your front lines. The Swordmasters of Hoeth. These are a great sword infantry. They are heavily armored with a special added effect which allows them to deflect shots at a 20% chance. They have high leadership, average speed, high melee attack and defense, high weapon strength with bonus versus infantry, and good armor piercing, high charge bonus for infantry units. These guys can be used for bolstering your front lines, or you can actually use them as your front lines. These are quite expensive, but they will chop up any basic frontline infantry on their own. Last of the melee infantry is the Phoenix Guard. This is a halberd infantry, heavily armored, extremely high leadership, average speed, high melee combat stats with good armor piercing values, and bonus versus large. They take 30% less damage from non-magical attacks, cause fear, negate charge bonus from any attackers. They are one of the few units with Martial Mastery instead of Martial Prowess. These guys can be used as frontline units. Preferably, you should keep these guys in reserve to counter any large units that have been engaged. They are extremely effective at taking down mainly large units and holding the front line. Keepers of the Flame, a regiment of renowned version of the Phoenix Guard. They have higher leadership, attack, and defense. They also have Martial Mastery and an added effect of Mark of the Eltharion, which means whenever a Phoenix Guard unit dies, it will cause its killer to burst into flames. Basically meaning anytime a model from this unit dies, it will take an enemy model down with them as well. Utilize these guys in the same way as the basic Phoenix Guard. Now we are moving on to the Missile Infantry of the High Elf roster. This is sort of where their strength lies. First are the basic archers. Extremely lightly armored, 24 ammunition, 180 range, and 19 missile strength. These are your basic missile infantry. They easily outrange a lot of ranged units in the game, so make sure to fire them into enemy missile infantry or fire at the backs of routing units. Archers with light armor. These have much higher armor compared to the basic archers, slightly higher melee defense. All of the stats are the same. Always try to upgrade all of your archers to these guys if possible. Utilize them in the same way as the basic archers. Now we have some very strong missile units, which are basically the most versatile units of the High Elf roster. The Ulthuan Sea Guard. This is a missile infantry with the ability to switch to spears. Similar stats to the spearmen, but have lower defense. 22 ammunition, 165 range, 19 missile damage. They negate the charge bonus of any large attackers. These guys should be placed on the flanks, have their bows drawn, fire into the enemy. Whenever the enemy attempts to flank you, these guys will be there to defend it. They can quickly switch to spears and hold off cavalry or any large units. They won't hold for long, so you will need to bring in some strong anti-large units if possible. Ulthuan Sea Guards with shields. These are the same as the basic Ulthuan Sea Guards, except they have a higher defense of 40 and a missile block chance of 55%. This makes them just as strong as spearmen with 1000 less health. If possible, upgrade all Ulthuan Sea Guards to shielded and utilize them in the same way as the basic Ulthuan Sea Guard. The Talons of Tor Khalida, a regiment of renowned version of the lightly armored archers, better in every way with an added bonus of 70% fire resistance and flaming ammunition. Utilize these guys in the same way as the basic lightly armored archers. Shadow Warriors. These are very strong missile infantry, but you only have access to them if you are playing as Alith Anar or you have confederated him. They have decent melee combat stats for missile infantry, 20 ammunition, 180 range, 22 missile damage. They have Vanguard deployment, can fire while moving, and stalk. These guys should be Vanguard deployed close to where the enemy will deploy. You can easily harass the enemy before they even clash with your frontline units, or you can hide them in the woods and bring them out once the front lines clash to fire at their backs. The Storm Riders, a regiment of renowned version of the Ulthuan Sea Guard, better in every way, but they are not shielded versions. Added bonuses are they cause fear, have Vanguard deployment, and can fire while moving. Utilize these guys in the same way as the basic Ulthuan Sea Guard, or you can Vanguard deploy them to give them the opportunity to fire at the enemy's backs. The Sisters of Avalorn. These are some of the strongest missile units in the game, very good melee combat stats, 22 ammunition with flaming and magical damage, 180 range, 24 missile damage with good armor piercing values. Pit these against any missile infantry, they will completely destroy them, then you can decimate whatever unit you target with them. The Grey, a regiment of renowned version of the Shadow Warriors, higher leadership, attack, defense, and missile strength. These units remain hidden while firing, and have Lois's Shroud, which gives them 24% increased speed, stock, and unspottable. Everqueen's Court Guards, a regiment of renowned version of the Sisters of Avalorn, higher leadership, attack, defense, and missile strength. They increase the leadership of nearby units and give you improved recharge rate of your Winds of Magic. Utilize these in the same way as the basic Sisters of Avalorn. Now we are moving on to the Cavalry and Chariots. First are the Illyrian Reavers. These are a shock cavalry, decent armor and leadership, extremely fast, average melee combat stats, 40 charge bonus. They have Vanguard deployment. You should use these guys for chasing down enemy missile infantry. Try cyclocharging them instead of leaving them in prolonged combat because they have pretty low defense. Silverhelms. These are heavily armored with pretty high speed and leadership, slightly higher melee combat stats with an even higher charge bonus of 64. They also do bonus damage versus infantry units. You can use these guys for cyclocharging the enemy front line's flanks or charging them in and leaving them in prolonged combat. Try to avoid spear units. Silverhelms with shields. These are the same as the basic Silverhelms, but they are shielded with a misblock chance of 30% and have a slightly higher melee defense of 30. Use these guys in the same way as the basic Silverhelms. Ithilmar Chariots. These are heavily armored chariots with high speed and decent leadership, average melee attack and defense, high weapon damage with bonus versus infantry, high charge bonus. You should use these guys for cyclocharging the flanks of the enemy front lines or disrupting enemy missile infantry. Lion Chariots of Crace. These are slightly better than the Ithilmar Chariots, but have lower armor and melee defense. These are anti-infantry with good armor piercing values, have 30% missile resistance, and cause fear. Use these guys in the same way as the Ithilmar Chariots. You just cyclocharge them in the enemy's flanks, or you can chase down enemy missile infantry. Now we have the fancy Dragon Princes. Heavily armored, high leadership, high speed, average melee combat stats with high weapon strength, high charge bonus. They have 20% physical resistance, 7% resistance to fire, and have martial mastery. This unit is a little underrated for its cost and requirements for unlocking. They should be used for cyclocharging, chasing down enemy missile infantry, or charging them into the flanks of the enemy front lines, and make sure to leave them in prolonged combat. The Fireborn, a regiment of renowned version of the Dragon Princes. They are the same as the Dragon Princes but have higher leadership, melee attack, and defense. Use them in the same way as the regular Dragon Princes. Illyrian Reaver Archers. These are extremely fast missile cavalry, 18 ammunition, 140 range, 19 missile strength, can be vanguard deployed, and can fire while moving. You should vanguard deploy these closer to where the enemy deploys, harass the enemy units while avoiding missile fire. When the front lines clash, bring them around the flanks to fire at the enemy missile infantry, then you can fire at the front lines' backs. Heralds of the Wind, a regiment of renowned version of the Illyrian Reaver Archers, same as the basic Illyrian Reaver Archers, but they have better melee combat stats and slightly higher missile strength. You should use these guys in the same way as the basic Illyrian Reaver Archers. Tyrion Chariots. These are missile chariots with the ability to fire 3 arrows at once from each chariot model. They have good armor, low melee combat stats, but they do have bonus versus infantry, 50 ammunition with magical damage, 165 range, and a huge missile damage of 123. Mainly keep these guys in skirmish mode and let them harass the enemy while they are marching towards you. Now we are moving on to the monsters and beasts for the High Elves. First we have the Great Eagle, very lightly armored with decent leadership, extremely high speed, high attack and average defense, 390 weapon strength, good charge bonus of 62. They also cause fear. You should utilize this unit for shutting down any missile infantry or artillery on the battlefield. The War Lions of Chrace, war beasts for the High Elves, fairly low armor and leadership, high speed, average melee attack and defense, with the weapon strength of 50, with bonus versus infantry and good armor piercing values, good charge bonus of 40. They have 20% missile resistance, cause fear and ignore speed and combat penalties caused by terrain. These should be used for chasing down enemy missile infantry or chasing down routing units. Rhaegar's Pride, a regiment of renowned version of the War Lions of Chrace. They are the same as the basic War Lions of Chrace, except they have higher leadership, attack, and defense. They also have Mighty Roar, which reduces leadership and the speed of all enemies within range. Use these guys in the same way as the basic War Lions of Chrace. The Flamespire Phoenix. This unit is lightly armored, has decent leadership, extremely high speed, 42 melee attack with flaming damage and magical damage, average defense, 330 weapon strength, good armor piercing values, good charge bonus of 54. It has 70% fire resistance, causes fear and terror, has 12% damage resistance. It also has the ability Rebirth, which gives the Phoenix a chance to restore up to 60% of its HP back whenever it is below 10%. Another ability called Wake of Fire. This causes the Phoenix to dive bomb to the units below and erupt a small fire tornado. You can send these to fight with the front line or chase down enemy missile infantry. You should at least use the dive bomb ability on the frontline units before chasing down the enemy missile infantry. The Frostheart Phoenix, another variant of the Phoenix but ice. Fairly similar stats but have more defense and weapon strength. It has magic damage, good armor piercing values, causes fear and terror, 12% damage resistance, and Blizzard Aura. This causes negative 12% base weapon damage, negative 9 melee attack, and negative 12% armor piercing damage. Due to the Blizzard Aura, try to keep this one fighting within your front lines. The Arcane Phoenix. This is the highest tier variant of the Phoenix, has decent armor, high leadership, extremely high speed, high melee attack with fire damage and magical damage, 40 melee defense, pretty high damage of 440 with good armor piercing, high charge bonus as well. It has 20% physical resistance, 7% fire resistance, causes fear and terror, 12% damage resistance. This variant also has Rebirth, with an added bonus that causes moderate damage around it whenever it does successfully rebirth. It also has the ability Ember Storm, which causes a vortex of magical and fire damage in an area. Uses Phoenix for fighting in the front line or killing off ranged infantry. Now we are looking into the Sun Dragon, the first dragon variant of the roster. Has decent armor and leadership, high speed, high melee combat stats with flaming damage, high charge bonus, has 25% missile resistance, causes fear and terror, and has the ability called Sun Dragon's Breath, which basically speaks for itself. Try to use this ability on heavily armored units. It will absolutely decimate them. Dragons should be used for fighting in the front lines. You can pit them against low tier anti-large units, but they will still take a good bit of damage from them. The Moon Dragon, similar to the Sun Dragon, but it has slightly more health, armor, defense, and weapon strength. The main difference of the Moon Dragon is that its breath does more damage when used against large units. Use this guy in the same way as the Sun Dragon. Lastly, we have the Star Dragon, the highest tier variant of the dragons. It is stronger than the previous two in every way. Its breath is good against both heavily armored units and large units, so use it on whatever you like. Utilize this guy in the same way as the previous dragons, fighting in your front line, but first make sure you get off its dragon breath before engaging in melee combat. Now the High Elves have access to only one type of artillery piece, and that being the Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers. They have poor melee combat stats, but that's to be expected. 24 ammunition, a huge range of 380, 138 missile strength with good armor piercing values. The unique thing about this artillery piece is that it can switch between anti-large ammo and anti-infantry ammo. You should use this unit to whittle down heavily armored infantry on their march to you. Once the front lines clash, start targeting the missile infantry. Now we are going to look into a basic early/mid-game army composition. This should be able to hold well against many armies if you utilize them correctly. First, we'll have 5 spearmen, 3 white lines of Crace, 3 lightly armored archers, 4 Ulthuan Seaguards with shields, 1 Illyrian Reaver, 1 Silverhelm with shields, and 2 Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers. This is a max-sized army. If you're wanting to spread yourself thin with more armies, you can remove 2 white lions, 2 Ulthuan Seaguard, and 1 Bolt Thrower. This will allow you to field more armies if your income limits you. So now we're going to look at how we're going to want to form up our army on the battlefield. We're going to place our 5 spearmen as our front line, and we're going to have whatever lord we have, place him in the front line as well if he is a melee unit. Then we have our 3 lightly armored archers in the center, guarded by the 4 Ulthuan Seaguards with shields. So these guys will be able to fire freely from the middle. Ulthuan Seaguards with shields will be able to fire as well, but if there's any flanking maneuvers happening, they will be able to switch to their spears and easily fight back any cavalry or flanking units that come around. Then we have the Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers here. They'll be firing at the heavily armored infantry or any large units depending on the situation. We have our 3 white lines of Grace here in reserve. These will be used to bolster the front lines wherever needed. Our Illyrian Reavers are over here, vanguard deployed in the woods, deep in the woods, so they are not seen. So are the Silverhelms. So whenever the front lines clash, these Illyrian Reavers in the woods will be able to come out and chase down the enemy missile infantry freely. And the Silverhelms can do the same as well, or they can recharge the enemy frontline units. So that about wraps it up for our High Elf unit roster guide. I hope you found it useful for your High Elf campaigns. I will slowly be releasing unit guides for each faction for Warhammer 2 until we have a full playlist of all of the factions in the game. If you enjoyed this content here, make sure you drop a like. Also, hit that subscribe button to keep up to date on any future guides I release in the future.